But those same lawmakers are in a showdown over the future of those Russia probes. Democrats are questioning the impartiality of Republican Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Richard Burr, who reportedly helped the White House rebut news stories about alleged communications between Russia and the Trump campaign. Let's bring in Oklahoma Senator James Lankford, who serves on that committee. Senator, welcome.
Glad to be with you.
Let's go ahead and start off with your expectations for the president's speech in just a moment. But I also want to ask this. Democrats are concerned that your committee chairman, Richard Burr, can't be impartial because he rebutted news stories about Russia on the White House's behalf. Can you understand why they are concerned?
I can understand why they're concerned. Obviously, there's a news story that came out over the weekend. When you actually sit down with Chairman Burr, you find out it's a little bit different than what the news story that actually came out. The most important thing on this, excuse me, the most important thing is that at the end of the day, Republican and Democrat members both have to be able to agree on whatever report is put out. So this is not a report put out by just the chairman. It's the chairman, the vice chairman, and all of the members, as well as a bipartisan staff. So while there could be statements about the chairman and we can disagree on what he said and didn't say, there still has to be a bipartisan movement to be able to go through the process.
Well, yesterday, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Republican Devin Nunes, said he'd rather focus his probe on information leaks to journalists covering the Russia probe than on Russian interference itself. Do you see investigating leaks as the priority of your committee as well?
It is a part of it. It is by far not the priority. There are all kinds of issues that are there. Obviously, leaks, anytime there's leaks from the intelligence agency, you always want to ask the reason why, because it hurts our long-term intelligence gathering, our trust with our allies, and what we actually do. You never want to have that kind of leak because people can't trust a conversation anymore. So that is important long-term. We have to deal with Russian interference. There's no question that Russia was engaged in trying to influence our election, to try to destabilize our country during election time period. We have to confront that with us, as well as what's happening with our allies around the world and what Russia's trying to do. And there's all the accusations that are sitting out there with the Trump campaign. We have to be able to discover all the facts, be able to get all the facts out on the table so the American people have a trust with how the investigation was done and the final conclusions of that. All three of those are exceptionally important in the process. I don't think I'd put one over the other as a priority. They're all just essential, and this is an ongoing part of the work the Intelligence Committee does all the time.
Well, your committee colleague, Republican Susan Collins, says she wants former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn to testify in the probe. Are you prepared to compel him to do so?
I don't know if I'm prepared to compel him. I don't even know if we would need to compel him. That implies a statement that he wouldn't get a chance to come visit with our committee. We want to be able to go through a lot of interviews. I'm not going to list all the people that are in the interviews, but there are quite a few interviews that need to be done and will be done as we work through the investigation. But at the end of the day, again, Republicans and Democrats alike have to agree on the final report, which means we both have to agree on the thoroughness of that investigation.
And would you, Senator, be open to a subpoena on the president's tax returns?
No, I don't even want to get into that. Quite frankly, we've never had to go subpoena a president for it. You couldn't even do that with a separation of powers type issue right now. So that's not even a reasonable question to be able to ask, nor a legal question that we'd have to compel the president to do.
Couldn't that put to rest, though, some questions? Your colleague, Senator Collins, has said that that would help kind of give a fuller picture if there are any potential ties there to Russia, financially speaking.
I don't think there's even been an accusation of ties of President Trump to Russia from any financial ties as well. That's not even been out there on the table. And I understand a lot of people are trying to raise that to create it, but there's been no legitimate connection or accusation even of that on the table.
Let's turn to the Affordable Care Act. What specifically can President Trump say tonight to expedite the process toward agreement on an Obamacare replacement plan?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that he can do. One is he can step out, set a tone of civility for the country. Obviously, the country's very heated after a very heated, long election time period. It's always important that in this speech, which is not really a State of the Union, but a joint session to be able to set the stage for the next year for the American people, to set a positive tone for that, but to also explain what is the problem with the Affordable Care Act, what people call Obamacare. Some people think that this is just a partisan issue. There are 6.5 million people in the country right now that are paying the penalty on their income tax rather than getting the Affordable Care Act insurance coverage. That means either they can't afford that coverage, so they're paying the penalty, or they have the option of the coverage, but they'd rather pay the penalty than to be able to get a coverage they want. It's almost identical, the number of people that are on the subsidies that have been provided for those in the individual market and those that are paying the penalties on it. So what we've seen in my state, for instance, where insurance rates have gone up 111% just in the last 24 months. What we've seen in my state is a reverse. There were people that were uninsured before, but other people that bought insurance. People who used to buy insurance now can no longer afford it. They're now paying the penalty instead. Some other individuals are now receiving the subsidies. We can't have a structure like that. So it'd be important for the president to be able to lay out, here's what the real problem is. This is not just a partisan political issue. There's a real practical issue that we've had a problem with health care in the past. Now it's become even worse than what it used to be. We have to be able to solve this, and then to lay out a set of ideas to be able to solve the health care issues that we have as a nation.
Finally, Senator, we only have about a minute left, but you said you look forward to getting more information about the president's agenda tonight. Are you satisfied with the level of policy guidance the White House has offered in its first month?
So the president's obviously brand new to it. He has very few of his staff in place, both in the White House. He has a skeleton staff there getting on board. A lot of them don't even have clearance yet to be able to be on board. Obviously, there's been a slowdown. My Democratic colleagues have done a historic slow walk on cabinet officials. Every other president other than George Washington has already had their full cabinet by now. We're still fighting to get cabinet nominations through at this point. So it's very difficult for him to bring policy recommendations to us when he doesn't even have a cabinet yet. That cabinet has not been able to even hire their staff yet. So some of the blame that's on the president for not being able to bring forward some of the ideas are because he doesn't have a staff yet. And he can't get a staff till we get it through the Senate. So while he's trying to get a lot of things through, it's important we get busy as a nation. There are a lot of issues we have to deal with. I understand why it's been a little slower to bring proposals in there when you don't even have your team on board yet.
All right, Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma. Senator, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.